Hello, I'm Barbara McGillivray and I'm a lecturer in Digital Humanities and Cultural Computation here at the Department of Digital Humanities of King's College London, and I'm co-investigator of the MuseIT project. So we designed this study to analyze how the language of disability changed over time. So for example, if we take a word like cripple, it used to be used to refer to people with disability, but in the last period, they say end of the 20th or 21st century, it acquired an offensive connotation, and particularly when language evolved to be more focused on people first and more respectful of people with disability. And then lately we've also seen in some communities reappropriating the term, but mostly it's still considered offensive. So what we wanted to do was to look at historical texts covering from the late 17th century all the way to the 20th century. And this is a collection that was digitized. It's called History of the Disabilities. And we want to look at specific words and how they were used, and to look at whether they were used in an offensive way or not. Just really to collect a lot of information and data about how the language around disability shifted. This is very important because language reflects how society conceives people with disability, and how the narrative around disability has shifted. And it's a very important aspect of democratizing the language around disability, which is very well in line with the purpose of the MuseIT project, which is about democratizing access to cultural heritage assets for people with disability.
And which results are expected in the MuseIT project?
So we expect to collect data that show us specific trends around these words and the language around disability, so that we can be more aware of the bias that inherent in language and how these shifted over time as a reflection of societal attitudes, and then that will inform our narrative and our effort towards democratizing access to cultural heritage for everyone.
But your experiment is connected to something which is technological?
So we have developed some methods for identifying abusive language in texts automatically. There's a lot of research in this sense, and we are contributed to this research, but what is missing is typically the temporal aspect. So how the language actually changes over time is very important. And so we want to develop these methods that are able to identify offensive language over time. So both in historical texts, in more recent texts, but having that temporal awareness, and that's the innovative contribution of our research.
You are working with old texts, not printed text. Is there difficult then to find the bias in this kind of text?
Yeah, so we are working on a collection that was digitized, and it includes both books and manuscripts. And there's a whole process to digitize these texts and make them sort of processable by machines. And there is a lot of variation in these texts. So what we see is that the language is really evolving, and that's what we are collecting. And the part of the study is also about how to annotate texts that were not written at the time where you are. So we have cultural norms, we have reference points for the 21st century, but those texts were written several centuries ago. How can we make sure that we are interpreting the text in the correct historical context? So that's also an innovative part, because a lot of interpretation of text is, of course, biased towards our contemporary perceptions, but we need to sort of situate our analysis in the historical context in which the text was written.
A last question. To create your list of biased terms, did you base on other existing vocabularies or did you start on scratch?
Yeah, so we used various sources. We used the Oxford English Dictionary, which traces English words and their evolution over time. We also used some lists from Wikipedia, and then we also resorted to a project that was run at Stanford University called Disability at Stanford, where the scholars conducted interviews with people with disability and collected a lot of material about their language. But we are always looking to expand the list and make it more comprehensive.
Last question. When you are speaking on this list, you are only working on English words, but are you aware that we have a lot of words and that a term cannot just be translated? Did you work on this issue?
Absolutely, we are fully aware that what counts as biased in one language does not directly translate to biased language in different contexts. So for now we're starting with English, but we hope to expand this and open to collaborations with other projects who are looking at other languages. In fact, we are in contact with a project in the Netherlands where they're looking at Dutch language and sort of contested concepts. So they're very interested in our method of annotation. But that's just one of the possibilities. And of course, it would be great to work on other languages.
Thank you.
Thank you.